morning, everyone, and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. And I'm Raylene, content producer at Leader Associates. And I'll be your host for today's session, The New Competitive Frontier, Feeding the Future of Intelligent Oil and Gas. For decades, competitiveness in this industry was measured by reserves and footprint, who had the most, who were the biggest. That's no longer the whole story. Today, competitiveness is increasingly about intelligence, how well a company operates, not just how much it earns. And AI is no longer confined to pilot projects. It's becoming embedded in how companies make decisions and run their operations every single day. So that's exactly what we'll explore today, how AI is reshaping competitiveness in oil and gas. And we'll begin with where the competitive landscape is shifting, move into the data foundation that makes AI possible, and close with a conversation on what it takes as an industry to build this together at scale. So here's how today will unfold: two keynotes followed by a panel discussion. So feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A box as we go. We'll get to as many as the time allows. And before we come to our first speaker, I want to set the context for why this conversation extends well beyond today's session. This webinar is part of our lead-up programming to the Next Gen AI for Energy Summit, taking place November 3rd and 4th, 2026 in Houston. There we'll bring together more than 600 senior leaders from across the energy value chain, operators, technology providers, investors, and innovators shaping what comes next. If today's discussion speaks to the work you are doing, we'd be delighted to welcome you there this November. So now let's turn to today's agenda. Join us across sessions are voices spanning strategy, operations, and technology from BCG, SLB, Chevron, AWS, Microsoft, and Berkeley Hill. They'll give us a view of what it takes to build intelligent oil and gas enterprises. So for our first keynote, we are joined by Ramya Sesirathnam, Managing Director and Partner in BCG Houston office, where she advises energy clients on strategy, AI, and unconventional resource development. She's led major transformation across the industry and has the AI and technology practice at BCG Center for Energy Impact. Her keynote, Redefining the Competitive Age, AI is Reshaping the Oil and Gas. Please join me in welcome Ramya, Managing Director and Partner at BCG. Ramya, over to you.
Thank you so much, Raylene. Really excited to be here today and talk a little bit about how we're seeing AI reshape oil and gas. As Raylene said, the crux of my work that I lead at BCG is around AI for a range of oil and gas companies and how they think about unlocking value with it. So I will share my screen now and talk a little bit about what we're seeing. So as you all probably experience and know, AI is coming into the context of a sector and an industry that is going through phenomenal change and has sort of been through it for the past few years post-COVID. There is enormous complexity, geopolitical uncertainty. There is a huge pressure, despite sort of the variations that have happened in price over the past, 2 quarters. There is still enormous pressure on performance and cost and value delivery, and a time where, especially on the exploration and production side, a lot of focus on how do we restart exploration? How do we think about the resources for the future? The much needed or the much sort of expected decline in demand is not something that has really materialized. And so everybody in the sector is really thinking about, what do we do with our capital? What are the smarter choices that we have to make? And how do we really restore sort of investor trust in this entire sector? And so coming into this context and is AI, and AI is having impact as we see at BCG across all sectors, but for oil and gas in particular, there's such a good sort of synergy of application, be it in sort of real-time intelligence, be it optimization of decisions, thinking about sort of boosting production margins. I would say that AI is not new to the oil and gas sector. A lot of the clients that I work with have had decades-long programs of AI or machine learning or traditional data science. And the focus on AI with sort of Gen AI and the whole GPT movement has just sort of put it on steroids. And now it's just making the access and usability of AI much higher, and hence thinking about what is the application. I will say, as we see all of this change, we see real examples of value unlock and impact across the sector. All of the examples that you're seeing on page are real clients that have seen value in sort of reducing downtime in things like turnarounds or scheduled maintenance for complex process facilities. We have seen sort of operations execution optimization in real time. I've seen everything from sort of AI guiding you as you think about your drill bit, AI guiding you as you think about sort of real-time maintenance. We've also seen robotics and physical AI become a much bigger topic in the past year or so. And subsurface is one that I think there's been sort of leaps of advance. I've seen sort of every major company in this space talk about how not only is it reducing their time of analysis, but it's also increasing their odds of success and thinking about sort of just the error rates and reduction in that. Our sort of view across the value chain for oil and gas is that there is real dollar value potential in upstream, in refining, in fuel retail. And I see clients really trying to not just use AI for the sake of AI, but thinking about what are their core issues that they need to solve and how AI can be a supercharger in getting us to that value. I will say, as I work with sort of a variety of clients in this, yes, everybody is on this journey. I don't know that I have met an oil and gas company in the past, I would say 6 to 12 months, who has said, oh, I'm not interested in AI. They're all interested in AI. They all have a list of use cases. I think the big challenge that lies ahead is really how do you scale AI? How do you go from use cases and pilots to actually scaling it to be able to get impact across your company and across your enterprise? And I think there's a few fundamental reasons or challenges that drive this. One is being able to clearly attribute, track, and manage value. It is hard, and it is not a new problem to AI. I think it's a decades-long problem that has existed for all digital initiatives. And it's just amplified because AI puts everything on steroids. The second part, I think, is really around adoption. And you will see, I'll share a little bit about our thinking of this. There's so much focus on the algorithms, the product, the process rewire, that sometimes companies are forgetting a little bit about to get the value, you still need to put the hands in the tools of people, and they need to use it and they need to adopt it. And so, how do you think about adoption? And I would say, finally, the third piece that really is that we've seen sort of as the blocker or not or success is leadership commitment. The places where we see AI really being able to drive value is one where we see real strong leadership commitment and sponsorship of the effort. And this is true across sectors, not just in oil and gas or in energy. So we think about AI in sort of three buckets, which is, the deploy, reshape, and invent. I would say think about deploy as sort of something that's more off the shelf. I'm sure a lot of you use GPT or Copilot. It's really around sort of your email, calendar, productivity. That's really sort of that. That's not something that's going to give you a competitive edge. It's more of the table stakes that you have to do. And then there's the middle that is really reshape. This is thinking about reworking an entire workflow for turnarounds or for supply chain or for seismic imaging. And then there's a third bucket, which is invent, which in other sectors is often really around new products or new concepts. But for oil and gas, it tends to be more around exploration or really sort of a big effort, multi-year, that really starts to think about your production and future growth. We would say the companies that create the most value are the ones that stay focused on the reshape and invent, because deploy is something you can buy versus having to build on your own. And even within reshape and invent, we have seen that the companies that tend to really have focus and have like a fewer number of use cases or projects create way higher value due to that focus. And finally, this is the thing I was talking about before. One thing I will end on this note, and then I'm happy to take any questions, is the companies that truly succeed in their transformation journeys with AI are ones that have sort of 10% of focus on algorithms, 20% on the platforms, tech stack, data, and 70% of the effort actually goes into people and process. It's all about adoption. It's all about understanding the user's needs. That's where a lot of this sort of falls apart. And so that's sort of the 10-20-70 framework is something that is fundamental to how we think about AI and the success of AI. So that's sort of where I'll pause, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramya. That was fantastic. Fifth things really stood out for me is that the scale of the challenge and oil and gas companies are facing right now, and the real evidence you shared on where AI is already moving the needle, and that framework, the reminder that AI transformation is mostly about people and precise, not just about the technology. And I've got a few questions I'd love to dig into with you. So let's start with the big one. Maybe everyone's probably wondering, is AI actually a reality in oil and gas today, or are we still mostly in hype territory? What is BCG actually saying on the ground with your energy claims?
Yeah, I would say there is some hype, but I would say it's not all hype. I think
Okay.
there's real money, real dollars that companies are putting behind AI and AI programs and efforts. Like, not only are they having the sort of deploy, which is the co-pilot or whatever, I have clients who are thinking about end-to-end redesign of workflows. I have clients who are thinking about broadly about sort of responsible AI and cyber and sort of security. They're thinking about how they can fundamentally reshape and deliver the next performance sort of benefit. And this is something that is on the mind of, I would say, every executive in this suite, if you think about it. The CHRO is thinking about it because they're thinking about people and jobs and skills and what do they need for the next generation. The CIO is thinking about it because, a lot of it impacts their systems and security. The COO is thinking about it because they have pressure to perform and they're thinking about how AI can be the next lever. There's real dollars in this going in. There's real commitment. I do think there's still some hype, especially on things like physical AI or some of the stuff that's a little bit out there. But there's real commitment. There's still a question mark on how much value it's creating. And that is the sort of the next question for the industry to solve.
That's a great starting point. And it actually leads right into my next question. What, in your experience, separates the companies that are turning AI into real business value from those who still start in proof of concept mode?
Yeah. I think the
Mhm.
ones that are able to convert to real value run AI like a business. They basically have a cost, a value, and they have to show returns with any sort of AI effort. They run it like a business. It is not a cost center sitting on the side that somebody's going and thinking about. They run it like a business. I think that is number one. They have solved their scaling and adoption challenge, so they are able to go from pilots and use cases to really talking about reworking how they think about work and how they are going to adopt it. So I would say that is probably the second one. And finally, I think leader adoption, as I said before, leader championship, sponsorship. If it is not a priority at the C-suite, it's going to be really hard to drive that change. I think those would be my sort of 3 points.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And building on that a bit further, how can AI technology be applied across the various stages of a project design execution to improve its efficiency?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're seeing AI across every stage of the value chain. The project types that you're describing are probably more for something like a major capital project. We are seeing I mean, I think Nplan is one that's in the major capital project space that is doing a lot of AI for early stage sort of front end engineering, feed, design work before you ever get to FID. We're seeing a lot of AI in the supply chain space, everything from sort of procurement, contracts, negotiation, all of that. Sort of the entire project life cycle can be reimagined. So yeah, it's touching every part of, I would say, the oil and gas value chain.
Yeah, Ramya, thank you so much. This has been such a great way to kick things off today. And we need to move on to the next part. Thank you, Oregon. And for our next keynote, we are joined by Denis Pachikov, Corporate ERP Program Director at SLB based in Houston, based over 25 years at the company across operations, IT, and enterprise transformation. Today, his focus is on turning digital systems into real business value, integrating fragmented data, building the digital foundation, including AI. His keynote Unlocking Competitive Intelligence, how data integration powers oil and gas foundation. Please join me in welcome Denis, Corporate ERP Program Director at SLB. Denis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Raylene. Thank you very much to Ramya, who presented before me. Let me share my screen quickly. And please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. So good morning once again, everybody. Thank you very much for being here and for your interest in these topics. So I'm going to present you a slightly different angle than you probably can expect from the topic with the competitive intelligence on it. I don't run ERP, I don't run the AI team. I run the SLB's global ERP transformation, which means I spend my days underneath of intelligence, plumbing the data, the processes, the digital systems. So basically anything that will enable company to act upon what it knows, or will stops quietly or prevent quietly a company from doing so. So my thesis for the next 15 minutes is quite simple. The advantage in this industry is around about moving from what company owns to what it can act upon, right? And the competitive advantage is not in the data models, is not in the AI model. It's really about making your digital foundation and your data working together. So with that, let me start with the next slide. SLB, as many large enterprises, didn't grow on a straight line. So we grew through different acquisitions throughout our history. And on the top right-hand corner, you can see some of the major acquisitions we've done over the past 100 years of our history. And for the very long time, the companies we were acquiring were very similar in the way how the original SLB was, or Schlumberger back in those days, was doing the business. It was all around the services and digital, which means you get the request from the customer, you mobilize your equipment, you go with your crew to the well site, you perform your service, go back, do the maintenance of your assets, and invoice to the customer, right? And all the acquisitions we had were more or less copy-pasting this approach with the different technologies and different type of services they were providing. However, our last two major acquisitions came with a very different ways of doing the business, very, very different operating model. So first, Cameron, who joined SLB back in 2014-15, is very heavy on the engineered products. The dynamics of the activity they have is very different. They have a long, extended projects. The project they do for the customer can last for 1 year, 2 years, even longer. It's very heavy on the manufacturing activity, which means everything about the BOMs or bill of materials, about the parts, about the orders. So the revenue dynamic, the processes are fundamentally different if you compare it to the classic services operating model. And the last acquisition, large acquisition we had, ChampionX, who joined SLB last year, came with yet another very distinguished operating model, which is around the production chemicals. Means batch production, distribution through the very dense last-minute network. And again, very different way of creating the value for the customer and for the enterprise, very different processes. And those, so we ended up to have three different parts of the organization with a very different digital ecosystem, with a very different data language. So we have three different ways of calling who the customer is, who the vendor is, and so on and so forth. So the simple exercise of pulling the analytics across the company, let's say revenue per customer, becoming a very peculiar and sophisticated way of doing that. You have to go to each individual core. You have to pull the report from that core and stitch manually together to finally provide the analytics that was requested. And surely this is not the way how we want to support the business, how we want to support the decision making for our executives. So, and of course, that's not how your AI solutions can become successful if being deployed in the enterprise. So the question is, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to fix that situation? So the initial instinct, which is probably wrong instinct in this case, is, hey, let's standardize everything, right? So let's have one core ERP system. Let's put all the processes there, standardize certain things, and this way solve the problem. And, you know, we have this joke inside the company. The corporate color of SLB is blue. So we're saying, hey, when we're acquiring companies, we like to paint everything blue. And the good thing is we have a lot of smart people who, in this particular case, said, no, it's not going to work because we are dealing with a very different business and operating model. So the decision was made that we will preserve the three ERP cores in the company, in our digital ecosystem. And everything that is related to the operating model, one of those three, will be inside those cores. So this way, we keep supporting the business. We're minimizing the change management, and moreover, we enable them to do what they're best at, right? So we enable them to do their key operating processes and generate the value for the customers and for the enterprise. And that's where you see on the top-hand side, layer number one. So at the same time, on the left-hand side, you can see the schematical architecture chart that what we decided to do. So at the same time, you have a lot of processes and a lot of functional, mostly related processes that don't need to be different. There is no need to manage your people differently, or close your financial books differently, or do the procurement in different ways. So that's why we decided to create what we started to call harmonization layer that embraces all three ERP cores and push to that harmonization layer all the related processes from finance, HR, and supply chain. And that harmonization layer consists of a set of what we call peripheral solutions. You can see it on line number 2 over here. So would it be HR that is supported by SuccessFactors, or supply chain that mostly supported by Ariba, and other solutions? And not only by doing that step and creating this harmonization layer, we simplified our digital infrastructure. We also enabled our shared services organization, which is basically our internal part of the company that takes all the transactional activities from the business. Because now they are able to support all the three different operating models in absolutely the same way. So they help us to transact everything related to HR in the same way, finance and supply chain. And as a result, we help them to improve their key efficiency metric, which is cost per transaction. We also introduced another layer, which helps us to analyze the processes efficiency. I'm talking about the process mining. So something that not every company is using. for us, we decided that this would be a good way to further look into how the processes are executed in the system by users, where the deficiencies are, and this way constantly find opportunities to bring more efficiency and more way of doing things. And on the next slide, I'll show you where this layer supports our AI plans. And the last but not least is the data layer. For us, the focus was about harmonizing our master data through a strong governance and through a proper solutions, and also establishing the data products on top of it. And this is how we made the harmonized master data actually consumable. So 2 takeaways from this slide. First one, none of the decision about what exactly the architecture will look like is the technology decision. It's all about supporting the operation and making sure that your digital ecosystem actually enables the business to succeed on the market. And the second one is the core of this harmonization that we've done was around the harmonizing of the master data, and creating this foundation really enables everything downstream that communicates with the data and helps us to either run advanced analytics or introduce the AI cases for the company. Two particular AI cases I wanna show you here that we're working on that actually benefited from that foundation layer that we're creating. One of them is AI for analytics. When we started our advanced analytics journey with the company, we enabled that via what we called a CIM, which is Corporate Information Model, which is nothing but just curated data models per particular domain or function or topic. So, for example, we have data model for revenue, or data model for payroll, or assets, and so on and so forth. So this is just a curated set of data that can be consumed by Power BI, and users are welcome to do the analysis as they need. The biggest problem with that approach was it only worked per core. So we could not create, without the proper harmonization, the data model that would consume the data from each individual ERP core system. So with introduction of the data products, we overcame that challenge. So now that data products consume the data through each individual core, the harmonization is done with reference to master data harmonization solutions we have. And the analytics can be seamlessly done right now across the whole company, across the whole 3 different ERPs. And AI comes here, enabling our users to start visualizing the data the way they need, not only relying on Power BI. That was a great technology when we just introduced that, but definitely has its own limitations. So users are not limited by the pre-built dashboards and can really do the one step forward and talk to the data and get the slicing and dicing done the way how they need. The second AI case is about continuous process execution improvement. And I have to put a disclaimer here. We are still early on our AI journey. We just started, and as I said, with the foundational activities. And but at the same time, we understand what needs to be done. We have our vision. We have the technology in place and the capabilities in place, expertise in place to get this done. So on the previous slide, I showed you that we introduced this process mining layer in our architecture, which not only gives us the diagnostics where the deficiencies are or where the kind of repetitive activities are. It also gives us the insights that become the opportunities for the AI cases, where exactly we can automate the activity and take away this repetitive load from our users and introduce the efficiency to overall how we operate. So that's where we stand right now with those AI cases. Again, not everything is settled. We're glad that we have this foundational level to support those AI cases, and we definitely keep working on that. One kind of lesson learned from that, and word of caution for people on this webcast. Something we learn, unfortunately, not in an easy way. That any tool that we introduce definitely need to have the right operating model and right governance around that. The system we use right now for process mining is not the first one we had in the company. The previous one was a great system. It was Celonis, but unfortunately, when we brought it, we didn't spend enough time introducing the governance around that and introducing the right team around that. And as a result, the way how the system was used became very fragmented when it pushed to the down to the divisions or down to the functions. And as a result, the value we were getting out of that was very fragmented and not up to the level that we were expected to have. So now with the new system that we're bringing, we're definitely taking these lessons and trying to be more mindful about the governance system and the processes and organization around that. And my last slide is summarizing the lessons from our journey. So first one, we cannot standardize everything, and any standardization decision should be made based on what exactly the need of the operations, how exactly your digital ecosystem can support business going and operations going forward. Only harmonize what needs to be standardized, and again, so where harmonization will bring the value to the overall enterprise. Master data harmonization was unglamorous, was a very effort-consuming exercise. However, we believe that was a must-have step toward creating that foundation that will support any advanced technologies deployment in our company. And the final point here is any decision or any activities that we've been working on that foundation was not driven by AI. AI rather became the outcome of all those activities. So as I mentioned before, creation of that foundation layer was around the business rather than around the technology. And I'm really happy to see that the company right now is really taking very strong steps toward AI implementation. We have some early results. And I believe that the work we've done with the team on the digital ecosystem and the foundation layer will enable the successful deployment of those AI solutions. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Dennis. That was such a refreshing angle on this. 5 things really landed for me, just like the PowerPoint you showed me now, the idea that you don't standardize everything, but harmonizing only what has to be common. And that's why AI is a payoff, not a strategy. It really reframes the whole conversation. I've got a few questions for you, starting with one from our audience. And how do you see the future of AI-human collaboration in capturing tacit knowledge, especially when so much operational expertise in this industry still lives in people rather than systems?
No, thank you very much for the question, Rolin. I don't think we will completely move away from relying on people, and people are still a core in everything that we do. At the same time, we're working a lot on so-called semantic layer, that basically sharing with AI, with the models, the language of the company, and that's something we're also learning, that it's a mandatory and must-have layer that simplifies the work for AI. We're also looking at some of the solutions. Our main or one of the main partners, technological partners, SAP. They just announced creation of such a AI-enabled layer that will help to gather their kind of tribe knowledge of the company or the corporate knowledge, and enable that knowledge for their AI consumption, and eventually for sharing with other employees. I think it's still very early. We need to understand what exactly it gives, what the limitation of that technology. So anything like with any technology that we work, we're trying to be mindful, trying to understand what the values and what the limitations or disadvantages even sometimes from deploying of that technology. So definitely open for it, but we're going to be very careful on evaluating that technology.
Okay, and I noticed that we received 2 questions from the live audience, and you can say that from the Max, the question from Max asked, can you explain more about the semantic layer and how it helps AI models understand your company's language?
Yeah. So what I mean by semantic layer, maybe it's too basic. I'm not sure if that's a question from the person. So semantic layer is helping you to simplify the communication with AI model. Just a couple of examples. We have one of our division that is called well construction. At the same time, very often we use the acronym for that, which is WEC. Right, and AI doesn't know that this is the same thing. When and one user can use, hey, give me the I don't know, revenue performance of well construction for the last 6 months. Another can use the WEC. So we want AI to know this language, to know these commonly shared acronyms. Also, generative AI is very good in the language, but it's not very good in computation, in mathematics. So to simplify some of the analytics, you have to teach AI what's exactly the definition of particular KPIs that we use in the company, how exactly we calculate days sales outstanding, how exactly we calculate the stock on hands, and things like that. So we are simplifying for AI the way how it pulls the data. In terms of the architecture, we went with derived data products, meaning that semantic layer sits on top of every data product that we create. There are pros and cons of doing that, but at least by doing that, we improve the communication with each of these data product, and our data architects feel like this is the right way for our company.
Yes, and Max asked, how do you measure the ROI of the master data harmonization effort before seeing AI results? Thank you for your talk.
So it's definitely not something I can answer over like 2 minutes. But we were gathering before we started this journey. We were gathering what we call the pain points from the business, where each of the divisions we have in the company submitted the list of where exactly they're struggling, and each of the pain point had, and you cannot be exactly correct. Like if I cannot pull a particular report, did I lose 2 hours of my time? Did I lose something else? Or because I was late on making decision, I lost the opportunity to capture or win a particular tender, right? So there were some assumptions made, and finally, based on those assumptions, based on those assumed numbers, we made a decision that yes, we want to go with harmonization of the master data. And again, so with more companies coming, and I don't see how Schlumberger will stop the M&A process. The situation will only be more and more complicated if it's not going to be solved at this stage.
Yeah. Dennis, thank you so much. That was a fantastic look at what it really takes to build the foundation. Everything else depends on. So let's move on to the next part.
Thank you.
Thank you. Remian showed us why the competitive edge is shaping, and Dennis showed us what it takes to build the foundation. For our final session, let's talk about how these things get done. So I'm happy to bring in our panel now for our closing conversation, co-building the intelligent oil and gas enterprise ecosystem, where collaboration drives scale. And we've got operators and technology partners together on this one, joining us from Chevron, AWS, Microsoft, and Baker Hughes. And I will now hand it over to our moderator, Remian, to introduce our panelists and get the conversation going. Ramya, over to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think I'm really excited for this panel because, we had a prep call and we talked about sort of all the candid takes on what works and what doesn't work in AI. And I'm really excited to hear from this panel. Before we dive into it, I'd love for each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about sort of your journey on how sort of you've used AI at your companies. So maybe we can start with you, Julian.
Yeah, for sure. So Julian Moreno, I started a little bit ago, like 30 years ago, back in my home country, Venezuela, in PDVSA, the national oil company over there. Then I joined Schlumberger at the time on the division called GeoQuest, and I spent 26 years of my life in an amazing journey that took me all over the world, working with production systems, completions, information management and innovation, building software. And then I joined Microsoft for the last 2 years. So this is my third fiscal year in Microsoft as an industry advisor for the energy and resources industry group at Microsoft, driving the whole new initiative with the a frontier company at Microsoft, and that is full around AI. It's not just about leveraging AI, but how could we drive the business outcomes that the customer wants to deliver those things. Talking about my experience on AI, so working a lot of development at Microsoft and also in SLB on the last, I would say, 10 years, working on that, mostly based on knowledge-based systems, knowledge graph, and all those things, creating those semantic layers that Dennis was referring to really deliver the solutions that we have today. And I'm very happy to be on this panel. Thank you, Ramya.
Thank you, Julian. Mirajul, would love to hear a little bit about you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. This is Miraj Haq. I'm the General Manager of Supply Chain at Chevron's Gulf of America business. Hey, very glad to be here, and already really enjoyed the discussions initially happened, Ramya, your presentations, and from SLB, fantastic discussions. So I've been with Chevron, actually all my careers. I've been with Chevron over 27 years in different parts of the world. And I guess my exposure. So when we met for a trial run and we were discussing among ourselves, one thing I realized is though, and I knew this before, that I am not the AI expert, in this panel. So I was telling the group that any hard questions on AI, I'm going to pass it on to Jay and Julian and others, and I'll answer these easier questions. So I guess the part that I bring in and my exposure to AI is that I manage supply chain for Gulf of America, and then before this role, I was the global head of logistics for Chevron, led the logistics function. Prior to that, I ran major capital project supply chain, and prior to that, I was the global category manager for Chevron's global relationship with all the engineering, fabrication, and subsea companies. So the purpose for me going through a little bit of that history is that I bring in the business perspective. And we'll go through a number of the examples as we get more into the discussions. But I guess my role today is to give the perspective of, okay, we have this nice, cool technology, and these are enablers, integral part of the business. But where is it adding value to the bottom line for the business? What business problem are we facing that we were not able to solve before, but now, with the use of AI or technology, we are able to get there. So I guess my focus area is twofold. One is to really connect the business problem and then figure out how we solve that with technology. And the second thing is, I think Ramya, you went into a little bit of this discussion, all companies have a ton of ideas on what we can do in AI, but how do you prioritize and how do you really put the right governance in place to make sure that we as an enterprise are working on the right stuff? We're working on the right priorities that actually adds business value that gives you competitive advantage. So really looking forward to the discussion and very glad to be part of this panel.
Awesome. Daniela?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Daniela George, and I am part of the Partnerships and Alliances team at Baker Hughes. I have been with Baker Hughes coming up on 8 years, and prior to that have been in different parts of the oil and gas industry, both in the upstream side as well as the downstream side in different functions, be it engineering or commercial functions. How I use AI and my exposure to it is quite heavy right now, as you can imagine. What I focus on is trying to develop new and innovative partnerships with different technology providers and developing solutions for customers that really challenge the way that they work today and solve as many problems as we can. Really, my team is really focused on trying to make sure that we are not only answering their problems, but having a very collaborative and innovative approach to how we solve those problems. So really focused on different type of AI technologies. Today, the conversation is really around agentic AI, as everyone would probably agree. So we like to look at those complex challenges and address them in any which way that we can. And we, as we talked about in our preparation session, our team is really focused on making sure that we understand the business value before we create these innovative collaborations as well.
Awesome. Jay?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jace Hao. I'm the head of industry partnerships and solutions for energy utilities at AWS. So our team's whole job is to bring the ecosystems together, which includes the ISVs, the software vendors, system integrators, and also the industrial OEMs to turn technology, which includes AI capabilities, into outcomes for our customers in the energy and utility sector. So I've been with AWS for about 4 years. Before that, I spent about 16 years at GE Vernova in a number of technology and commercial roles, both on the line of business side and also on the digital solution side. So yeah, looking forward to today's discussion. Thanks.
Perfect. Maybe the first question is to you, Daniela, given your sort of work in partnerships and thinking about what you feel has worked with relation to AI partnerships and what you feel like the industry still needs to figure out.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll start with what I think the industry is doing really, really well right now. For starters, the whole collaboration aspect is something that I think the industry has come a very long way. If you look back a number of years, collaboration is not something that was as common. Most people would simply invest in a software and call it a day. But as we're seeing, the challenges are getting more complex. They're getting more difficult to solve. And rarely is there one type of technology that can solve an entire challenge. So I think it's really good that the whole industry is looking at these partnerships and collaboration and solving these problems together. I also think there's an element of utilizing new technologies, be it from different startups or established technology providers like our Microsoft and AWS friends. But ultimately, just working together as a whole is something that the industry is doing very well, and it's encouraging to see them tackle these problems together. I think what could be improved and what can be done better as far as AI is concerned, there's a couple of things. The first is really starting with the business value first. I think oftentimes if that is missed, the AI is simply stuck at a pilot phase. It will just simply not be scalable if you don't look at the true value of it, if you approach it as a check the box or as solving one specific problem, and you don't look at the holistic picture and the whole business value, I think you can really get lost in that and fall into that trap. The second thing is, I think it's really important to look at things long term. Because of the problem of not looking at the business value, I think a lot of people get stuck in, you're solving for a very small problem, you're not looking at the whole business value, and you miss the potential of doing things better. You miss being able to really solve and innovate and just have a longer lasting impact on what you're doing. At the end of the day, I might be a bit of a hot take, but some collaborations are really not as thought out as they should be, and perhaps are only a press release, if I'm being honest, as opposed to having a true business value behind it and a true reason as to why what you're solving for. I think that's how you get the best types of collaborations, and I think it's something that needs to be very focused on.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear sort of both sides of the story from maybe from you, Miraj, to start off on how you think about business value as sort of the guiding light. And then I'd love to hear from you, Julian and Jay, on how you think about it from the technology side of how you let the problem guide the answer. So maybe Miraj, you first, and then we can hear from you, Jay and Julian.
Yeah, sure. So let me, totally agree with what Daniela was talking about. And maybe let me build on that a little bit from the customer perspective, right? So what Daniela talked about is, in my mind, it's, I guess, elevating the relationship from transactional to strategic. And as she was referring to that, in today's world, no one system solves all the problems, and you have a lot of systems. So, when a new company, not just a new company, when a new technology, new solutions coming to you, you cannot have a siloed thinking about, does this application solve this problem? You also have to think about what's the implication of this solution in other areas, and then take the thought process to the next level and say, okay, how do I find synergy? How do I find more value by implementing this and solving even bigger problems, right? So that, 1+1 is not 2, but it gets to 3, 4, and 5. So that's the, increasing the overall pie for benefits is a key guiding principle there. Now, answering your question on how the business value really drives the solutions, you can't have, I think, we talked about this, we can't have a hammer looking for a nail, right? I mean, we got to have the nail first. Okay, so what is the problem we are trying to solve? One area that we need to train when I say especially the business owners' mindsets, is that previously our thought process was, okay, here's a problem we have, and we immediately think about, okay, we can solve it this way or that way. No, that's not possible to do it this way. And I'll give you an example on this. We need to broaden our mindset now, because in many cases, maybe I'll speak for myself, I don't even know what's possible with AI. So I need to actually talk to the right people to figure out, okay, here's a problem I have. Is there a solution for this? Instead of thinking, no, this is too complex, can't solve it because my knowledge base is dated. To give an example. So, in my previous role as the logistics functional manager globally for Chevron, I worked a lot with Nigeria, Angola, Eastern Mediterranean, and many other areas, Thailand, and all those places. So one of the key areas that comes into the focus is optimization. We have significant spend in the marine space, and if you can optimize fuel, if you can optimize the fleet size, the routes. Now, think about this. We may use different applications in different areas. Fuel, definitely, we have electronic fuel management system, where you have, the cargo management system. Then you're talking about optimization, but these are not siloed. These are all integrated, right? I mean, if you can optimize the route, then you may need less number of vessels. Now, with the less number of vessels, even then, you have using the EFMS, you can use, less fuel. So how do we really think about all these things together? And with our offshore platforms being spread out in all over, a certain location, manually or even with Excel or with regular tools, thinking about what's the best route, because it's very dynamic. Your needs change every day. I need water here, I need cargo here, I need people movement here. How do you optimize? You need a really intelligent system around that. That's where AI comes into the picture and say, oh, okay, given the history, this is what you usually do. This is how you can really optimize your route. And that may give you this type of vessels. And then also, your focus areas is not just the vessels, number of vessels themselves, but also the overall cost. Maybe you need to get rid of two small vessels and get one bigger vessel so that it can go to many places. You see, there are just so many different variables. In statistical terms, if you think about a multivariable regression or anything like that, that's very difficult to do humanly in Excel or other areas. But think of, AI brings a lot of those. But again, we are not looking to AI first to see, hey, what solution do you have that's cool and we can implement? I can have a really great solution, but it may not have a lot of business value. Versus you have a real business problem where you have real value. And we actually went through this and had a lot of discussion with the senior leadership on this for Nigeria and said, okay, now what solutions do we have? And then we looked at multiple different solutions. Hopefully that sheds some light from the customer perspective.
Yeah, no, that is really helpful. Jay, I would love to hear the AWS side of how you think about sort of AI and partnerships and what really unlocks the value.
Sure. Yeah. So from AWS perspective, there are two guiding principles for our solutions. The first one is what we call working backwards. So that means we are not starting from technology, but we're starting from business value, like Daniela and Morocco was saying. So we work backwards from business value, from the problems our customers want to solve. And then we map those to both AWS and our partner ecosystem solutions. And we also have industry specialists working alongside with our technology experts who really bring that industry expertise in solving the problems. The second guiding principle is that we recognize there is different stages of adoption in different departments at companies. I think one of the difference between success and failure is adoption, as you mentioned in your keynote earlier. So so recognizing that we are not pushing end-to-end transformation as a kind of the lead-in, but we're really listening to customers, trying to understand what stages they are from a maturity standpoint, and then help them move from their current stage to the next, right? Over long-term vision is to get them to transformation, but really, I think we have to be very practical and solve some tangible problems, delivering really tangible values for them first. So in other words, our approach is think big but start small and design to scale.
Thank you. Julian? Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I couldn't be more agreed with everybody on this context. And I mentioned from the perspective of Microsoft what we have as a vision with the frontier companies. What we are seeing with these frontier companies that they are no longer treating AI as a technology project. They are treating it as a core business capability. These organizations combine AI, data, and human expertise to fundamentally reinvent how work gets done, how many decisions are made, and how value is created. And we were talking in our previous conversation about how many people doing these pilots of, oh, we used to do A, B, and C steps, and how do we automate and use AI to do A, to do B, and to do C, to get into the end-to-end workflow or to get into the business side. So I think that a lot of companies are really wasting their time into this. And I think that the right approach is this track of reverse engineer, is what do we really need to think to get into our outcome with or without AI to be able to get into these outcomes and to the value that we have. The difference between a company running AI pilots and a frontier company is a scale. Frontier companies have the leadership, the data foundation, and Dennis mentioned it on his previous speech about the operating model, the governance, that have this leadership to model to have the operating model needed to move from isolated experiments to enterprise-wide impact. There's no longer small company. All the companies have more or less the same shape and format. And I think that we need to move from this isolated use case and go beyond what our capabilities are doing. And Microsoft, along with some others, are creating this foundation that companies require to deliver what is needed, which is value.
Perfect. Thank you so much, all. I think we're at time. I would love to thank all of you for your time. And I think sort of what I took away from this panel is there's a lot happening in this space in AI. Partnerships are crucial to really thinking about scale and going beyond sort of the starting point. And really focusing in on value, and that being your sort of guiding principle is really the sort of key, I think, as we think about even partnerships or what we choose to pursue. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Huge thank you to all of our speakers for such a rich and honest conversation. I think if there is real line across today's three conversations, is this: the shift from passive to intelligent isn't a single decision, it's a stack. Ramya showed us that the competitive edge itself is moving from what you own to how you operate. And Dennis showed us that none of that intelligence is possible without a solid data foundation. And our panel got honest about the hardest layer of all. Even when the technology is there and the will is there, most AI partnerships in this industry still store out somewhere between pilot and scale. And what separates this one that make it through, you're right, it's not the technology at all. It's trust, it's governance, it's a real understanding of what each side is actually bringing to the table. So we mean this strategy, infrastructure, and collaboration. So building an intelligent oil and gas enterprise isn't a standalone story. It is part of a much larger shift happening across the entire US energy sector. So, and that's exactly the conversation we are continuing this November at the Next Gen AI for Energy Summit in Houston. And we'll be bringing together 600 plus senior leaders from operators like Chevron, ExxonMobil, and Diamond Energy to utilities and great operators like Energy and Gemini Energy to the technology side with Microsoft, NVIDIA, and AWS all in the room. So its agenda points will be on oil and gas, digital infrastructure, AI-driven risk management, and how the entire US energy industry scales AI. So if today gave you a taste of where this is headed, November is where you will see it play out in the room with the people actually building it. We hope to see you there. That brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you to all of our speakers, and thank you for joining us. We'll send the recording and a recap within 1 week. And if anything comes up, feel free to connect with me. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you in Houston. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.